I already have a case study set up where I'm going to show you how to be able to get out of debt. All you have to do is stay till the end, and you'll see an approach where we're able to save someone tens of thousands of dollars, and we're able to save someone several years off of their spending. And when we go into that case study, you'll be able to see it. And if it's something that you like, you can model it in your own expenses. Hi, it's Dre Griggs with Obsidian Wisdom. Today we discuss the 5 steps to conquering debt before your retirement. When it comes to managing your money and getting out of debt, there are 5 things that you must know to be able to achieve that. It's very difficult for the majority of us. That's why 70% of people live paycheck to paycheck. That's why about 70% of people have less than $1,000 in their savings account. It's also why our credit card debt has hit an all-time high and has passed $1 trillion, why about 33% of people have increased the amount of money they've taken out of their 401k. It is very difficult, whether you want to talk about inflation or just general spending habits, to be able to get out of debt so that you can use your money more effectively. I am someone who believes that the system was designed to achieve that exact goal. It runs off of us being employees, being workers in the system. And if all of us were financially free, there's a whole lot of nonsense that we wouldn't put up with. As a result, the more TV you watch and the different things that you do on a normal basis, they increase the likelihood of you spending money on things that you don't actually want to do. Step number 1 for you to be able to get out of debt is changing your relationship with money. You can tell that people have different relationships with working out and eating healthy. You can tell that people have different relationships with their family. There are things that we can see at the top of the iceberg, and it makes it very easy for us to recognize someone's relationship with certain things. The Rock, the way that he eats, it's very clear that he eats for nutrients for his muscles, right? Like a bodybuilder. They don't eat for it to taste good. They rarely put the sauces on it and all the different flavors. They're really trying to eat for the protein. That is their main goal. On the other end, if you've ever seen that show like My 600-Pound Life and things like that, you find that their relationship with food is they eat for the emotional benefit. And there's tons of studies that talk about that. And the main takeaway is it's much cheaper for us to buy a cake or ice cream than it is for us to take a vacation to the Bahamas. And for many of us, because our relationship with food is a little bit on the emotional end, we end up sometimes eating a little bit more than we should. And we sometimes aren't eating the most healthiest things for our body. When it comes to your finances, it's the exact same idea. What do you spend your money on? Do you spend your money on things that bring you some sort of an emotional joy? And that really could be anything. I've met people where they spend money on their children. It helps them to feel good. They felt like growing up that maybe the money wasn't spent on them the way that they thought it should have been. So as a result, when they had their kids, they made themselves a promise that they would spend on their kids and they would not worry about the cost. On the other end, if you felt like, well, I was always hungry, we didn't really spend a lot on food, my parents were very strict, so when I grow up, I'm going to spend the money on food and all these other things because that's what brings me comfort. Sometimes the emotional connection is tied to something that's actually very beneficial for us. It could really be how healthy someone is, where we're like, look, I'm a very healthy person, so I eat organic, I eat a lot of fruits and vegetables. And anyone that knows the healthier you eat, the little bit more expensive it tends to become. And if we find that any of our spending is tied to a strong emotional connection, we may be overspending in that particular category. And we want to be able to rein that in. So you will say, well, Dre, how do I do that? The second thing on our list is you do want to keep some sort of a track of your finances. There are certain things that we don't care how much it costs. We're going to spend it because there's some sort of a very good reason that we feel we can spend that. Well, the problem with a very good reason and not knowing how much is being spent on something is when do we know to stop spending, right? If we don't have any idea when we've gone too far, then we don't really know when we should turn around. And so for most people, if you are someone that ends up spending a significant amount in any category, whether it's family or friends or trips or work or working out or eating healthy, whatever it looks like, then you want to be able to say, look, how much would be a good number for me to spend on? And as long as you hold yourself to that number, I personally think you'll realize how much you actually spend on that, how much of a negative impact it has on your finances. Because if there's anything that we make an exception, is what I'll call it, where we say, I can't be put on a budget, I cannot be put on a restriction for that particular category, that is the category that's killing you. That is the category that is causing you to be in debt and unable to get out of debt. All of us have it in some way, shape, or form. If you're not 100% sure where you spend money on, then I would say look back at your last month's spending. And if you want, you can go to obsidianwisdom.com and then you can create your own Wisdometric account. And then you can actually take a look at the finances yourself. Here we have the case study that I was mentioning where we're able to dive deep into how to get someone out of debt, where you have an actual real life example. This person has a car loan, they have a mortgage, and they have credit card debt. And we're going to decide the best strategy for us to be able to get out of debt as quickly and efficiently as possible. The third step to getting out of debt is recognizing that all debt is not created equal. Some debt is much easier to pay off than others. So in this instance, your car loan and your mortgage are going to be easier to pay off because the interest is already built. It's a set amount. We call it a simple interest loan. And all it means is every payment, there's already a set amount that goes towards interest and a set amount that goes towards principal. And that doesn't really change. So as a result, it's already has a term that's set. Worst case scenario, you make the minimum payment every single month and you'll be out of debt in whatever the terms you arranged were. In this particular one, they have about 13 years left on their mortgage. And then I think they have about 3 years left on their automobile, maybe 2 years left on their automobile. The more difficult debt to get rid of is your credit card debt because that interest is compounding. So every single month, whatever your balance is, it has a certain calculation for the amount of interest that is added onto your balance. And as a result, if you're using the credit card more some months or you're holding it over a long period of time, you may have the majority of your payment every single month if you're making the minimum payment that goes almost strictly towards interest. You don't have as much going towards the principal. It's not a set amount. And normally your credit cards also have a much higher interest rate. So not only are they designed in a way that makes them more difficult to pay off, they actually have a higher interest rate. So that makes it even more difficult to pay off. Now, granted, what they would say is, well, look, obviously we're going to give you a lower interest rate on your secured debt, which means it's tied to like a house and a car. So if you don't make the payment, we're going to take your stuff from you. A credit card is an unsecured debt. And as a result, the only way we can protect ourselves is by charging a higher interest rate. That's what the bank and the credit card companies would say as far as explaining why the interest rates vary. But it's important for you to recognize the difference so that when you're putting your plan together, you know which ones make the most sense for you to pay off first to get out of debt. So in this particular case study, we have about $5,000 left on the car. That's at about 8%, about $450 a month. The mortgage, we have about $150,000 left. That's at a 4%, and we pay about $1,400 a month. And then these credit cards, we have a different range of credit cards, and they total about $15,000. And you see, we have everything from a 30% rate to a 15% rate, and then we have the minimum payments that are due on each of them. When you look on the details tab, it's already set on monthly, so you're able to see how much each payment you make. So every month we make a $25 payment, you can see that the majority of that payment is going towards interest on the credit card. You can switch towards the car loan. You can see that we're paying the $450 a month. It has a much lower amount that's actually going towards interest because you've already paid a significant amount of the interest early on, and it has a much better interest rate. When you look at your mortgage, you can see that this is the amount that we're paying and this is the amount that's going towards interest. You always get to see what the beginning balance and the ending balance are so that you're able to see as they get paid off. As you scroll down, you can see that your mortgage would be done in about 2034. So you have a little over 10 years left on the mortgage payment. And then you're able to see that for all of the cards, where if you were making the payments and you made the minimum payments each month, it shows you that you would be paying, about 7, 10 years, something like that. It would take a while for most credit cards, and they say that on the statements as well. So you can see currently we have about $170,000 in debt. And then if we're able to make the minimum payments on everything each month, it would be about 2036. So that would be about 13 years. We'll be completely debt free if we made the minimum payments on everything. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about some strategies for you to be able to get out of debt a little bit quicker. And that step 4 is, how can I put my money to work in a much more effective way? There's generally 2 approaches when it comes to getting out of debt. You're either going to decide to make the minimum payments on everything, and then you'll either put the extra money on your smallest balance, and then you'll keep adding that monthly payment onto the rest of your balances. The second choice is, I'm going to pay the highest interest rates first. As a result, I'll pay the minimum monthly payment, but then whatever has the highest interest rate, I'm going to put all my extra money on that. And then when that high interest rate is gone, I'm going to move to my next highest interest rate, and I'm going to work my way down as well. So let's see what paying our debt from the highest to the lowest interest rates would do. So we'll change that number. You go over here and you make the adjustment. And you can see that just paying the highest interest rate first will reduce your monthly payments by 54 months. And you can see that it will save you close to $20,000. So we went from having this debt out at 2036 to now it's going to be paid off around 2031. So just by allocating our money a little more effectively, we're able to significantly cut on our debt. Now, when it comes to those that say, well, I think I would rather pay the lowest to the highest, I'll go ahead and show you what that looks like. And you'll see that that doesn't actually make a significant difference in this particular scenario. Sometimes people will say, oh, you have to pay the highest interest rate cards first. I find that it really depends on the person. I'm okay with us doing the smallest amount because sometimes that emotionally gets you feeling good where you've gotten rid of a credit card and then it's gone and then you get rid of the next card. So I'm okay with that. But if you want to do the highest interest rate because that feels better, I think that works too. You can see that doesn't really move the needle that much. You're still saving about $20,000. You're still reducing your monthly payments by about 54 months. And you're still getting out of debt in a pretty good spot. Now, for most of us who are serious about getting out of debt, we want to be able to pay a little bit more each month. So let's say you're just paying an additional $100 a month. You can see that that saves you an additional $3,000 and it reduces about 6 months on your payments. So now you're out of debt 5 years sooner than you would have been. And so you can see as a result, now you're at the beginning of 2031, you're going to be out of debt. If you said I could do an extra $200 a month, now we have about 5 years cut off of our debt payments, and we're saving about $24,000 where we can now allocate that money towards our retirement fund so that we can achieve financial freedom. So when you look at this Chase credit card, you can see that we are making the monthly payments of $45 a month. We made the minimum payment. And you can see as we get rid of other debt that we're able to add that monthly payment onto this card where all of a sudden you can see a year from now, we've paid off a significant amount of our debt. And as a result, we're able to start paying almost $1,000 a month on this card. And it was only $2,500. So it went from taking 10, 11, 12 years to paying off to this time next year, we're able to put $800 on the balance and it's getting rid of it very quickly. To where you can see we're on the back end of some of these cards, we're able to start making some significant monthly payments to help yourself get out of debt, and it works very efficiently for you. Even the car payment, we're able to get rid of that next year because we're able to start maximizing the overall payments. Then when you look at your mortgage, once you got rid of all of your cars, you just have the mortgage, where you can start seeing that here in 2026, you're able to start paying $2,400 a month on your mortgage. Now, for some of you, you may say, well, Dre, I actually like my mortgage, so I don't want to pay it off right now. Well, then we can put that money towards your emergency fund. That's the fifth and final thing that you want to do. A part of getting out of debt is making sure that you stay out of debt. And the best way to stay out of debt is to have some money allocated towards an emergency fund. Oftentimes, what makes the most sense for people is let's start by making the credit card payments where we just work on whatever the minimum payment is. And then we either put the extra that goes towards the highest interest or the lowest balance. But I also want us to be able to allocate about $100 a month towards your emergency fund. Most likely, the reason that you use your credit card, the reason that most of us use our credit card is we had something that we wanted or needed, and we didn't have the actual liquid cash to be able to afford it. And so, what that means is if we don't have the emergency fund ever paying off this debt, as soon as an emergency happens, how are we going to pay for it? We're going to pay for it with a credit card. And that often is very deflating for many of us when we're paying our credit card, we're getting this avalanche going, we're feeling really good, but then something happens. Your AC goes out, something happens with your car, your kid broke an arm, whatever it is, something happens and you have an expense, you have no emergency fund in place. And as a result, you end up going back to a credit card and then you feel like you're spiraling again to where now everything's starting over and you feel like you just added another 5 years onto your debt. And so I often will tell people as soon as we start making some of these payments in a more efficient way, let's try to put $100 a month towards your emergency fund. Once we have the first thousand in place, then we can focus on the cards because for most people, it's usually $1,000 is whatever the emergency is. And then we can get out of debt and then we can finish the emergency fund. Ideally, you want to have 3 to 6 months. Some of the people I work with, because of their level at the company, it's actually very difficult for them to find a new job. As a result, they may want 12 months set aside. It really depends on how quickly you believe you can find work if something was to happen at the company went under, or you were laid off, or you had to quit for some reason. How long do you think it would take you to find a new job? For a lot of people, 3 months is really good. So 3 months will set you up, 6 months if you're not sure, and then a year if you have a very specialized, high level position where the interviewing process, maybe like 5, 6 interviews, the background check is so extensive, it may take a month or two to where you feel like you actually need a year's worth of runway. But let's start with $1,000 in the emergency fund. Let's start there and make sure that we're in a really good spot because the importance of getting out of debt is we need to be able to allocate 10 to 20%, ideally at least 20% of your money towards your retirement fund. If we can allocate 20% of your money towards your retirement fund, then I'm very confident that you can achieve millionaire status and retire very comfortably. The difficulty that most of us have with retiring is we're only putting 5% of our income towards something that we need to have 80% of our income being generated by. And the number one issue that most people have when it comes to being able to allocate the proper amount of money towards their financial freedom and their retirement is the fact that they have debt. So let's get you out of debt so we can allocate the money in a very effective and efficient way. If you're interested in putting your own debt plan together so you can see what strategy makes the most sense for you, if you go to obsidianwisdom.com, I'll also put a link in the description. All you have to do is click on the Wisdomites button, and then you'll be able to create your own free account, and then you put your information in there, and you can start putting a plan together so that you can get out of debt in the quickest and most efficient way possible. If you found value in this video, I simply ask that you like and subscribe so they can continue receiving valuable insights on how to solve generational wealth through strategic retirement planning. Until next time, stay safe and enjoy life.